I think you could actually do one of those FDA commercial things where you read the side effects really fast. That was really well. That was pretty quick pace. Well done. Our final debater against this motion, the FDA's caution is hazardous to our health, is David Challoner. He is Vice President Emeritus for Health Affairs at the University of Florida. He chaired the Institute of Medicine's Committee on the Public Health Effectiveness of the FDA 510K clearance process. Ladies and gentlemen, David Challoner.
Thank you, John, and members of the audience. I will be speaking, as was said, against the motion that the FDA's caution is hazardous to your health, in particular as it relates to the device side of the equation. The FDA is a public health agency. It is responsible for the safety and efficacy of the devices that are used by you, on you, and put in you. If anything, the anecdotes of the last decade would indicate that we need more caution in our systems. The evidence, I think this will reverberate with most of you. The Shiley heart valve, implanted in patients, many patients, begins after several years shattering and embolizing to your brain and to your peripheral body and killing some patients before they could be replaced. The Dalcon Shield IUD, put in women, causing perforation of the uterus, pelvic infections, some deaths, much trauma. Chemotherapy infusion pumps, which were poorly calibrated so that the operators could make mistakes and would infuse drugs, toxic drugs, at 10 times the rate that they should have because the wrong button was pushed, killing patients. Surgical mesh, vaginal mess. You've all seen these ads from the legal firms, I'm sure, soliciting your business. This was a surgical mesh that was used for the hernia surgery and then was transformed to be used and promoted to be used in pelvic surgery for women with disastrous infection and prolapse and a variety of other results. Radiotherapy machines, a linear accelerator, again, without maximum controls. 10 to 20 times the dose is given to a patient for a pulmonary tumor and drills a hole through them. Pacemaker leads, put into you to manage your cardiac rhythm, and then after 2 or 3 years, widely distributed, many people not knowing they have them, breaking, and arrhythmias and other cardiac rhythm disasters were occurring. Metal on metal artificial hips. None of you could have missed that. Removed, poorly monitored in this country, used widely, now giving metal embolism into patients and causing resurgeries and removals. Biliary stents that were approved for use in a very low pressure environment began to be used widely and promoted widely by industry for use in veins and arteries elsewhere in the body in which they collapsed or did not work. So I'd say, with this kind of evidence, that the case is almost closed and we could vote now. But I think the audience needs to understand exactly how we got to the point we're in. What is the process that has produced these problematic results? Well, the vast majority of medical devices used in healthcare in the United States are reviewed by the FDA before entering the marketplace and are cleared. That's a very important word. They are not approved for human use in a process called pre-market notification. or the 510 clearance process, which was named after the section of the authorizing legislation in 1976. And the FDA has to comply with this because it's legislated that they do so. And this was done 35 years ago in the face of rapidly evolving technologies, then stimulated by reports of problems, the public, legislators, the General Accounting Office, the DHHS Inspector General, and the courts, including the Supreme Court of the United States, have all questioned the value and logic of this clearance process, which is being used by a federal agency charged with protecting and promoting the public's health. What are the major elements of this process? Well, pre-market, before a device goes out and is sold to you or your doctor or your hospital. For no-risk devices, such as tongue depressors or manual wheelchairs, for instance, there are about 2/3 of those that are considered by the FDA and go to market directly and are considered basically of low or no risk. The high-risk devices comprise about 1% of what the FDA device regulatory folks must deal with, and they do have to have costly and time-consuming pre-market trials before approval. There's some question whether in the device case they are as powerful as those which already exist for drugs. The moderate risk 510K is the large middle ground. That's about 4,000 applications a year, and it's about a $3 billion a year industry, a very significant business. The 510K process was put in place by Congress and is not intended to evaluate the safety and effectiveness of devices. It cannot be transformed into a pre-market evaluation of safety and effectiveness as long as the standard for clearance is substantial equivalence to a previously cleared device, perhaps as early as 1976 or prior. So, these are called predicates, and there's no assurance that a predicate is safe and effective. There's no practical way to remove these undesirable predicates, and you therefore have a daisy chain of approval requirements in the process.
Thank you, David Challoner. And that concludes round one of this Intelligence Squared U.S. debate, where our motion is the FDA's caution is hazardous to our health. Now we move on to round two, and round two is where the debaters address one another directly and take questions from myself and from you in the audience. Again, stating the motion, the FDA's caution is hazardous to our health, and as we begin round two, we have heard from Scott Gottlieb and Peter Huber arguing for this motion. They're arguing basically, as Scott Gottlieb said, put it, that statistics are taking precedence over medicine at the FDA, that they're falling into the trap of statistical certainty, needing a level of certainty that is just out of control to the point where it's slowing down process, discouraging innovation, and therefore denying access to devices and products, pharmaceutical products that could actually save lives. They point out that Europe is approving drugs that the FDA is actually denying. And they say that the fact that some drugs actually get a special fast track suggests that there's something wrong with the slow track. The side arguing against the motion, David Challoner and Jerry Avorn, Vioxx. They point out the case of Vioxx and other instances of pharmaceuticals that made it to the market and killed hundreds of people. They've talked about devices that have poisoned and lacerated the insides of women. They also deny the argument that the FDA is slow to approve. They point out that 70% of pharmaceuticals are approved the first time around. And if anything, they say, what's needed in the FDA is not less caution, but more of it. The question I want to put to this side, it's not really a debate point. I'm looking for some clarification, and I just want to see if you will agree to their clarification, because I think we in the audience, myself and you in the audience, need a little bit of a picture first of what it is we're talking about when we talk about a classic FDA drug trial. You've referred to it. I don't see it. So Scott Gottlieb, if you could take 45 seconds outside of your debate time to tell us What is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3? Who's involved? How long does it take? What does it cost? And with the understanding that this is that system that you're talking about that you're challenging.